In this video, I would like to talk about both the German language and about German culture, so you can get an idea of what we're doing in German studies here at University College London. We will look at an image taken from UCL's museum collection. I will talk a bit about that image and its context, namely nationalism and national identity. Afterwards, you will have the chance to learn a bit of basic German grammar to do with articles and with a thing called compound nouns. This image is a print by someone called W. Lang, we don't know his first name, after a drawing by someone called Ludwig Rohbock. It shows a river landscape with views of Lahneck Castle, Stolzenfels Castle and Niederlahnstein Castle, all located on the River Rhine, which is near Koblenz in Germany. The print was made around 1863. This was an interesting point in the history of Germany. As you may know, there wasn't actually a German nation state up until 1871, when the so-called Second Reich, after the Holy Roman Empire, which was the first, was founded. Instead, what is now Germany consisted back then of a tapestry of small and larger states, loosely connected by the German Confederation, but mostly independent of one another. Here's a map for you to look at. The trouble with that kind of political arrangement is, what does it mean to be German? How can we define our nationhood? It's all very well for the French or British, who each had their own clear-cut state. For Germans, the question was more difficult. Since there was no such thing as a nation-state to represent nationhood, Germans reverted to other ways of forging their identity. Nationalism was all de rigueur in the 19th century, and Germans certainly joined in. So what did Germans use then to build their national identity? Well, language for one, hence the work of the brothers Grimm. They are most famous for their fairy tale collection, but they also started compiling the first ever German dictionary. It's huge, and it has only recently been completed. It's available online if you'd like to have a look. People back then, and still today, thought that language is an excellent marker of national identity. Whoever is a native speaker of German is German, and a German state should therefore include all the regions where German is spoken. Of course, this is not what happened. German is spoken in Germany, duh, but also in Austria, Liechtenstein, Switzerland and Luxembourg. So language takes you only so far, but it was a start. Another aspect is landscape, maybe not quite so obvious as language, but yes, landscape was very much a carrier of national identity in the 19th century. The Rhine in particular was seen by many as the quintessentially German landscape. So idyllic, with a spectacular river, deep woods and mountains crowned with castles. In our image alone, there are 3. The Rhine is also a region with a lot of local legends and fairy tales, which the members of the Romantic movement had been very fond of. Tourism became a thing at about the same time too, with the Rhine a popular destination for travellers from across Europe. The British artist William Turner, for example, produced a whole series of paintings of the river. But the most popular way to spread images of the Rhine were prints, like the one in UCL's collection. New technologies allowed quick and comparatively cheap production of prints in large numbers, and they were extremely popular with tourists and other Rhine enthusiasts. These prints unite a nostalgic longing for the past with modern technology. They were very popular both in Germany and in Britain. Interestingly, people only started to discover the Rhine and its natural beauty when industrialization had finally taken hold in Germany in the 19th century. So, at a time when people began to turn nature into a commodity, and the river itself had become a busy waterway for trade and industry, travellers discovered their penchant for times past, when everything had been clean and simple, or so they thought. Hence the appeal of the castles. They evoke the Middle Ages, a period safely in the distant past that people liked to romanticize. Just think of Wagner's Ring des Nibelungen, which he composed between 1848 and 1874, and which is based on a medieval epic located on the Rhine. In historic situations, when significant changes sweep politics and society, Nostalgia for the past can seem an attractive way to compensate. This print, with its idyllic depiction of the river, may have provided people with a welcome respite from the challenges of modernity, such as rapid urbanization, social and political unrest, and industrialization. And now for the language-based part of this presentation. Let's look at a few German words in this picture. Ship is in German Schiff. Wood is in German Wald. Castle is in German Burg. River is in German Fluss. And mountain is Berg. If you look at this list, you may notice that some of these words are somewhat related to their English equivalents. Since German and English both belong to the Germanic language family, there are quite a few things that the two have in common, and that includes both the meaning of certain words and also grammatical structures. For example, English nouns do have grammatical genders, just as German ones do, but in English they correspond with natural gender. So that means that every female being is grammatically feminine, every male being is masculine, and the rest is neuter. This is really nice. German, on the other hand, is not nice, of course. Genders in German are pretty much random. For example, we say die Burg, which means that it's feminine, die being the feminine article, and we can't really say that there is anything particularly female about a castle. Still, we take this really seriously, also referring to a castle as she, not it. With the other genders, for example, it is der Fluss, so for us a river is masculine and the corresponding pronoun would be he. And the word for ship, Schiff, is neuter, so it's das Schiff. Here are the three articles in German at a glance. I'm afraid that there are quite a lot of rules in German like this one, which may make German appear somewhat daunting to learn, especially in the beginning. But on the other hand, German can also be really playful. Let's look at those compound nouns that I mentioned earlier. Compound nouns are basically a sequence of two or more nouns that form a new meaning together. Here are a few examples based on the words we've already learned. Note that it is always the gender of the last component that determines the gender of the new word. So Burg plus Berg becomes Burgberg, a mountain with a castle on top. Wald plus Burg becomes Waldburg, a castle located within a forest. And finally, Berg plus Fluss becomes Bergfluss, which is a river in the mountains. It is actually possible to form new words as you go along. Some compound nouns are so common that they count as individual words themselves, and they have their own entry in a dictionary. Others are rather less usual, but native speakers will still understand what you mean. Here are a few more outlandish combinations. They are not part of everyday speech, but they're possible and completely understandable. For instance, Waldburgberg, that's a mountain in a forest with a castle on top. Or a Bergwaldfluss, that's a river through wooded mountains. And finally, Bergwaldflussburg, that's a castle on a river that flows through wooded mountains. I suppose you get the idea. And you could continue the game. How about this one? Bergwaldflussburg-Landschaft. Die Bergwaldflussburg-Landschaft. That is a landscape that contains a castle located in a river that flows through wooded mountains. And if we take that word, die Bergwaldflussburg-Landschaft, and add das Gemälde, a painting, we end up with das Bergwaldflussburg-Landschaftsgemälde, which is a painting of a landscape with a castle on a river through wooded mountains. Okay, let's do one more. Let's take the previous word, das Bergwaldflussburg-Landschaftsgemälde, and add die Sammlung, which is a collection. And then we end up with die Bergflussburg-Landschaftsgemälde-Sammlung, which, if I counted correctly, has 43 letters. You could still go on if you wanted. So, do not believe anyone who says that they know the longest word in German. There is no such thing. You could always glue a new word to whatever behemoth you've already created. But let's stop here, shall we?